Hello, Bankera friends. I am Ruta, VP for Marketing at Bankera. And today we have a phone interview with a very special guest, Mr. Wong, who is a president of NAM.io Foundation and a CEO of Dragonfly and Fintech Company. Also, we're really happy to have him as one of the advisors for Bankera. Hello, Mr. Wong. Thank you for joining us today. How are you today?
Yes, I'm good. The temperature is not, I guess, it's not as cold as you are in Lithuania, but I'm in Malaysia at the moment, so everything is fine with regards to my weather here. So yes.
Great to hear. I would like to know your opinion about where blockchain technology is moving. What direction is it heading towards, and what predictions or insights you could share with us?
The blockchain technology as a technology in itself is evolving very quickly at the moment, and is undergoing a lot of changes. And we have actually moved on from just a value transfer as what we have witnessed with the first blockchain technology, which is the Bitcoin technology. And now, as we progress almost close to 10 years, 9 years to be exact, we are seeing a lot of changes, and most of these changes extend to include non-regulated industry. And what I mean by non-regulated industry is that the blockchain technology could be applied to industries that that are traditionally not just value transactions. This could include things like land titles and registries, identity and passport, KYC, as in know your customer, food traceability and supply chain, logistics, notary and legal contract, document storage. Even it extends to things like hack-proof web content, as well as messaging and content delivery, and other things like medical and health records as well. So we're seeing a wide spectrum of applications where document storage and document proofing in respect of it being immutable, irreversible, and permission based, that is going to be changing in the coming years.
Great. How does the NAM network differ from other blockchain technologies?
Well, I should say that the NAM blockchain as a technology is a very simple solution to implement. Simple does not mean that it is not complicated, or does not mean that it is not sophisticated, rather. So it's simple because we have made it simple for any would-be solutions provider out there that requires a blockchain technology to power their applications. So writing application on it is simple, and more importantly, the NAM solution itself has what we call a templated smart contract. So templated means it is pre-designed, predefined, so that people don't need to actually write anything on it in as much as coding is concerned. So this could include things like multi-signatory, asset building, as in writing, creating smart assets, and doing other simple things like, especially with our new release where we have what we call the push-pull transactions as well. These are push-pull means in the traditional sense is normally pushing a transaction from a sender to a recipient. But now we could actually do things like we push from a sender and at the same time request the recipient to send something back. And then as soon as the recipient signs the transaction, it is now being sent back as well to the sender, an asset. So it could be, let's say, US dollar in exchange for Euro dollars, and then the sender now needs to send US dollar to the recipient, and return the sender is expecting the recipient to send back Euro dollars. And in one transaction, this can happen without having to trust the other party. So this is a very important feature, which we call it a smart feature as well, that is in the NAM new release that's coming out soon. So that's where it is very different with respect to other technologies. I would like to add on as well, some other technologies you need to write smart contracts on it, and to write smart contracts you could produce potential bugs as well, and this could cause a systemic risk to whatever business that is relying on smart contracts.
And what future plans do you have for NEM development?
Well, I think what is most important now is to address what we call the 80-20 rule. The 80 rule means we will try and give and provide applications that are practical for use for 80% of the industry, whereas those application-specific solution would not be suitable for NAM. So in as much as what we're trying to do now is we are trying to enhance more features that are more applicable to the general market, whether it's for the financial industries or for the non-regulated industries, such as what I've said earlier. So this is one of the things that we plan to do as we progress to add in more features. Like, for example, as I explained earlier, the push and pull transaction features. So the other thing that we will be looking at, obviously, is the scalability of the technology, as well as providing and enhancing both the private chain and the public chain. These are the things that we are looking at and are focusing on in our plans.
Could you tell us what are the benefits and weaknesses of NEM Mosaic and ERC20 tokens in your opinion?
Basically, what we have is that the NEM Mosaic is a smart asset solution. And what it means is, like I said earlier, it's a templated solution where you don't need to code it, as opposed to having to code a smart contract token issuance. So by way of it being a templated solution, you are basically filling in the so-called asset quantities, and the number of coins to issue, the type of asset that you want to issue, and you don't require the user to actually do any programming to load the asset onto the blockchain. It's basically a quick and fast way, and in fact, building a NEM mosaic is like 2-3 minutes. You can actually create one NEM mosaic, as opposed to a smart contract or sort of tokens that is to be issued in another blockchain. Again, this manner will basically reduce any risk on the side of the users, because the users don't need programming, and therefore it has less it is less prone to errors.
We know you're very selective in choosing projects to advertise. Why have you chosen Bankera? Did you see competitive advantage over similar projects?
Well, for a start, Bankera is pretty new in its approach. So this is very important, and that's where it attracted me initially. And obviously, I've been asked to provide advisory service to Bankera, and I've been invited by one of your advisors as well to be part of this, and looking at how Bankera is wanting to achieve its objectives by way of its, I wouldn't call it new, but I would call it a different approach to how banking could be done. And that's where it has attracted me to be a part of the Bankera team. So, of course, further, I would hope that Bankera will move in the direction of using the NAM blockchain technology as it's most suited. Actually, it's most suited for this solutions that Bankera is actually trying to roll out into the financial industry. So, in fact, the NAM blockchain is actually designed for such a application like what Bankera is trying to achieve.
Many ICO projects are using blockchain solutions to solve some kind of problem nowadays. Does everything need to be decentralized and on blockchain? What do you think?
Well, Basically, there are two meanings to the word decentralized. One is called the decentralized trust. Basically, it's trustless. Then the other thing is decentralized processes, which could be the nodes or computer systems that help manage and run the blockchain solution. So, in as far as a decentralized network is concerned, where nodes are located all over the place, this obviously is a very a good feature of the blockchain technology, and hence why the blockchain technology is very suited for things where you do not want people to be able to change transactions values or reverse transactions. So the blockchain in the decentralized mode, based on the number of nodes that you have on the network, is a very powerful solution. And on the side of the trust is most part of the trust is actually basically catered for by the blockchain technology. But there are certain trusts, especially in banking, where you want the trust to be vested upon the service provider, in this case, the bank, where there are certain things like, for example, the calculation of interest. You do not need to put that onto the blockchain because the calculation of interest is very dynamic, and a lot of business rules are very dynamic. So these are the things where it can be centralized. So this is where I see that not everything needs to be on the blockchain.
And what advice would you give to our viewers and us in general on how to select ICO projects and assess them before contributing?
Well, as you can see, of late in the last year or so, there have been a lot of ICOs, and what I've been seeing in these ICOs, some are scams, some are not, some are is a whole spectrum of ICOs that sometimes it is difficult for any investors or anybody that want to put some coins into such ICOs. And my advice, which is just one advice, is that looking at what we have, is that first we want to see and make sure that this any ICO project is viable as a solution, or practical as a solution, or potential as a solution. And the other thing that's more important to select, like I said earlier, there's so many ICOs out there. To select a good one and to put some money in it will require perhaps maybe a different view of it, by way of making sure that there is already some solutions that are in place, instead of what they are many are doing now, just vaporware, just a piece of white paper um, telling the investors that they are going to build this and that. I think that stage, we are past that stage. We need to really show that there is something solid that's moving on, and that's the best way to do is to actually show a working model, at the least, to the investors, that we have a project here that is good. So this is my advice to investors, that at the end of the day, the potential ICO projects must show something, at least in a very primitive stage, that it is working and it's moving on to the next stage.
And what would be a good rule of thumb to use as a way to understand which projects really require blockchain and which ones just need a traditional solution?
Well, I think the best thing to describe this is never try and fit a square peg into a round hole. So if it doesn't fit, don't force it. So basically, the rule of thumb is to actually look at how um, someone would use the blockchain technology. And that's the reason why I said earlier that the blockchain technology is evolving beyond just value transaction between two party two parties, and it is more now to include other things that require immutable, irreversible, and permission access of data and content. So this is where it's moving, and the rule of thumb now is to assess whether we require such a solution, or we require just value transfer. And banking, for example, banking is obviously a good fit for blockchain because basically it's a ledger, and the blockchain in its most primitive form is basically a ledger, a record of value transactions. So the rule of thumb is not to fit and to understand what is required before one embarks on using the blockchain solution.
Thank you so much for the interview. It was really lovely to chat with you today. All the best and have a lovely day.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
And for our listeners, please stay tuned to our official communication channels for the latest Bankera's updates. And until next time, bye.